WrestleMania is the biggest wrestling show of the year. We get so excited about it, some of us jump in planes and travel half across the world. And then our favorite superstar doesn't turn up, and we have to cry into our cornflakes. As we have seen time and time again, though, one shift can dramatically change the outcome of the granddaddy of them all. So what if we took our own fingers of powers and our imaginations, and we switched them and tried to fantasy book the opposite scenario? That's exactly what we are going to do today, because we are geeks. So prepare yourself, my friends, sit down and grab a coffee. These are the 12 biggest what-if scenarios in WWE WrestleMania history. Number 10, WrestleMania 1's huge success. And what if it didn't exist, or what if the whole show was a failure? The story has long been told that the WWF bet the bank on WrestleMania, as they saw it as the next step to global dominance. Turns out they were right, look what it spawned. Most experts say that if Mania had been a bomb, the World Wrestling Federation wouldn't have died as suggested, but the company would have struggled for sure. A hell of a lot was put into this. So what may have happened is the McMahons having to step aside to find new owners, and hey, maybe the WWF would have decided a worldwide platform wasn't going to work. They then stick to the regional territories. Imagine that wrestling approach in 2025. You also don't get NBC jumping on the Saturday night's main event train, and the big expansion in 1985 may have been thrown in the bin. Hulk Hogan also may have just left and gone to the movies. If there were more opportunities and the wrestling well had dried up, well, you never know. We could have got Mr. Nanny too, but either way, the WWE as you know it today would not be here. Number 11, WrestleMania 36. Could have never have happened if WWE had decided to stop running due to the pandemic. What if? Now it sucks to talk about this time because it was just bad. In 2020, the world stopped and nobody knew what the deal was. It kind of felt like everything was screwed. Somehow WWE kept running, which gave us the oddest WrestleMania ever. And I tell you, my friends, I can't even watch it now. It feels like you're attending a funeral. As we do know, though, WWE did have to sit down and discuss what shutting up shop looked like, and that would mean no WrestleMania. And given when COVID hit, it would have left Brock Lesnar and Goldberg as the WWE champions. Two dudes who weren't exactly full-time. Becky Lynch also got pregnant during all of this, and that would have meant a whole new direction for the women's belt. And I suppose when we did kick off again, those 3 championships at a minimum would have been all over the place. I mean, there's every chance we could have had a bunch of tournaments. Some people have suggested that WWE could have gone out of business if they weren't able to continue to operate, but I don't believe that. They would have been just fine. And really the biggest shift would have been the delaying of booking decisions and deciding, oh man, we just had a few months off. What the hell do we do now? Number 10, WrestleMania 39, and what if Cody wins the title there? So as I talk to you, the wrestling world is 2 years removed from WrestleMania 39, and looking back, I can say with a lot of assurity, which is not a word, that everybody made the right decision. If you do like to jump into the rumor mill, apparently Cody Rhodes was going to win the World Championship at WrestleMania 39, before Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman were like, let's just push pause on this, and we can do it at the Big 4-0 instead. That is where the American Nightmare finished the story, and all of this was damn brilliant. Aside from the people who got really mad after 39, they almost started a riot. If Rhodes had been belted back then, though, I would assume that Roman Reigns' tribal chief status would have been under fire, whereas Cody wouldn't have had that many contenders who could actually take the belt off of him, apart from Brock Lesnar. In fact, that feud was probably put in place when Cody was down to win the title. It wouldn't have surprised me if Brock actually won one of them and had the belt again. The real big question, though, is would this title reign be as successful as the one he currently has? And you have to imagine it would have been similar just because Cody Rhodes is so over, but we don't know about that sliding doors moment, and we do know waiting until 2024 was absolutely brilliant. Do not forget either that the instant gratification we would have got in 2023 wouldn't have had as good of vibes, and also the jeopardy wouldn't have been there. Could you have done everything with Jey Uso that we did as well if Roman Reigns wasn't the champion? And I remember those discussions. People were losing their minds going, the head of the table doesn't even need the belt. But in hindsight, maybe he did. Either way, you just know the bloodline battles would have eaten up the first half of the year. And it begs the question, what the hell would the main event of WrestleMania 40 been? I presume it could have been Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes. And if Roman has gone 12 months without the championship, then damn it, maybe he would have won it back. All things considered, I once again believe we did the right thing. Number 9, WrestleMania 9, and what if Hogan just wins the tag titles? That is right, my friends. If you do go back and watch WrestleMania 9, you will see Hulk Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake in a tag match. They were meant to win the World Tag Team Champions, and that was meant to be it. until Hulk turned up to the building and said, well, that ain't gonna work for me, brother. Of course, he didn't actually lose because that match ended in disqualification, but the reason we did move on is because Hulkamania had a brand new plan. Hulk could just walk out after the main event, challenge Yokozuna, and win the WWF World Championship in around about 72 seconds. It sucked. So let us say that Hogan and Beefcake had actually just won this tag team gold and we would have moved on as intended. Where the flub would we get to? I mean, Yokozuna would have been the champion and we wouldn't have had to wait until the King of the Ring. And let's face it, Bret Hart would have looked less like a goof. That was the real worst part about all of this. The Hitman just didn't seem to care. I mean, it wasn't his fault he'd been backed into a corner. Of course, if we are playing the Hulk Hogan and Brutus win the tag team titles line too, you can imagine Hulk then going, I'm also going to win the other gold. And then we would actually cry tears of sadness. The biggest change in this scenario, though, would be the nullification of arguably the worst ending to a WrestleMania in history. And I mean that too, it's just so damn silly. Who the hell ever agreed to this? I understand that Vince McMahon thought this would be Hulkamania Part 2. As we know now, that was totally wrong. Number 8, WrestleMania 8, and what if Hogan and Flair had wrestled? So when Ric Flair did finally arrive in the World Wrestling Federation, do not get this wrong, my friends. This was a massive deal. The Nature Boy was one of WCW's big stars, and he had just jumped ship. I mean, you can look at WCW in 1994 when eventually these two did clash. All of a sudden, pay-per-view buy rates were through the roof. So why the flub didn't we do it at WrestleMania 8? Well, the answer is nice and simple. These two did wrestle on the house show circuit, and when Vince McMahon looked at the numbers as WrestleMania was on the horizon, he decided, nope, we've already run this into the ground, and we should go off in separate directions. Now, there is some truth to this in the sense before the Royal Rumble of this year, they did indeed fight at 30 different house show matches. And yeah, that is a little bit too many. For whatever reason, it didn't actually captivate the fans, so I guess you could argue that Vince was right. And eventually we did get to our double main event, when we had the Macho Man taking on Ric Flair, and Hulk Hogan going against old friend Sid Justice. If we had stuck to our guns though and done Hogan versus Flair, it could have surprised the WWF and all of its fans. The build, I assume, would have been centered on the fact that Flair was an outsider holding the WWF's pride position, with Hogan being like, man, I have to win the company banner back. You just know that Flair would have bumped his ass off because he never minded doing that. And actually, given the things we have talked about, this could have been the catalyst for Hulk finding that newfound popularity he was so desperate for. It would have been totally different. Once again, we can look at that Bash at the Beach pay-per-view that happened only a couple of years after this. Maybe the WWF was wrong to cancel it. At the same time, that Flair versus Randy Savage match is so damn good. And as for Hogan versus Sid, well, it's a laugh riot. Because trust me, every single thing that could go wrong went totally wrong. Number 7, WrestleMania 30, and what if the streak doesn't end? So I have said this over and over, and I may as well throw it in there for the 34th, 4,617th time. I do not mind that Brock Lesnar was the guy to beat the streak at WrestleMania 30. I just think that WWE used that fuel for the next decade as Lesnar did become the final boss, and ultimately, did you see that reaction? It's the kind of stuff I love in wrestling. Don't you tell me it's not real. As we do know today, because everybody does want to discuss it, The Undertaker didn't actually know about this decision until the day of the show. He wasn't going to argue with Vince McMahon. Whatever was best for business. Let us say that during that time, though, Vince had gone, man, what am I thinking? This is really dumb. How the flub would this have looked? You have to imagine that eventually we would have gone back to Taker versus Brock, and Lesnar would have absolutely pulverized this guy. That always seemed to be the plan. In order to move Brock Lesnar and pull Heyman to that next level, they needed a legend that he could bludgeon. The dead man was perfect. It is fair to say, though, that the aura Brock went on to have would have been diminished by a WrestleMania 30 loss. But in terms of The Undertaker, my gosh, his myth would have only grown. I genuinely think by the time we got to WrestleMania 31 and he did take on Bray Wyatt, people would have clamored for it. And we all know how Mark Calloway himself feels about the Roman Reigns match. Even though he did lose there, he is kind of gutted that Roman wasn't the one. He sort of felt like it would help him way more. I actually think Bray would have been a better choice because the bragging rights he would have had to end the streak. Hey-ho, now we are in fantasy booking territory. Of course, the other what-if is the Phenom going all the way to the end of his career and never losing at WrestleMania, and that's something we do need to chat about too. Is that good or bad? Is it a positive or a negative for business? There's only one way to find out, and that's for you to make a comment below. And remember, try not to argue too much. There's not actually a right or wrong answer. Number 6, WrestleMania 20, and what if Brock Lesnar doesn't leave? So we kind of forget about this now, but Brock Lesnar's first run in the WWE was absolutely awesome. He entered right after WrestleMania 18 and raced up the card, winning the undisputed WWE Championship within 12 months. Not everybody can do that. He then dropped it and won it back at WrestleMania 19 in that awesome main event against Kurt Angle, and yet 1 year later he lost to Goldberg in Madison Square Garden at WrestleMania 20 because both guys had decided, you know what, I want out. As we soon learned, the Beast was burned out by the grind of WWE, whereas Goldberg was just sick of the company, and while he did try out for the NFL, that didn't work, so Lesnar wrestled a few matches in Japan before he went to MMA. We all know the deal there. It would lead to him returning to WWE in 2012, where he was a larger-than-life killing machine. And let's face it, he was a legit attraction, so he probably made the right choice. If somehow Brock had decided he was able to handle the travel, though, what the flub happens at WrestleMania 20? All the rumors suggest that he would have beaten Bill Goldberg, so that would have been a huge tick for him. And shortly after that, he would have remained a top contender for the world title. It likely would have led to getting revenge on Eddie Guerrero, who had just won his world championship from him at No Way Out. Or maybe he would have gone after Chris Benoit. At the time, he was the other title holder. You also had John Cena slowly rising up the card, so maybe Vince McMahon would have been tempted to do that too. And the big one, and one I think we can safely say would never have happened, is that Brock Lesnar never would have been the UFC heavyweight champion. It also means by the time we got to the 2010s, people probably would have been a little bit bored of Brock, 'cause that's just how life works. So when you do kind of throw this into a nice, neat little package, I actually probably think Brock Lesnar made the right choice. Number 5, WrestleMania 29. What if CM Punk does join the main event? So this has been talked about many a time, and by CM Punk himself. Given that we were about to do The Rock vs. John Cena Part 2, why not throw CM Punk into the mix, do an elimination triple threat match? He can be beaten in 5 minutes, he then gets his main event at Mania, and everybody is happy. Well, kinda. One person didn't want that. His name was Vince McMahon. Instead, we got to the Royal Rumble in 2013 when The Rock beat CM Punk for that World Championship he had held for 439 days. And of course, CM Punk went on to fight The Undertaker at that show. It's probably the best match of the night. Of course, if CM Punk had gotten his way and we jumped to 2025, well, the version of CM Punk we have now wouldn't have been able to exist. I mean, everybody keeps talking about the fact that he never main evented WrestleMania. If he had gotten this as well, would he have left in 2014? Now, it certainly sounds like he'd been beaten down regardless, but maybe that would have put a spring in his step. Would have actually taken on Triple H at that WrestleMania, where likely he would have lost. It's all about headspace and mental health then, and I guess it all depends how much this meant to CM Punk. But ultimately, you'd have to imagine that WWE would have seen him differently. They just put him in the main event of WrestleMania with John Cena and The Rock. Of course, it could have just delayed the inevitable, but this is another hindsight one. I'm sure when Punk did leave in 2014, he was devastated about this, but now he's just used it to turn himself into the grizzled old veteran. It is pretty damn cool. Number 4, WrestleMania 14, and what if Shawn Michaels can't go at all? So when Stone Cold Steve Austin beat Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 14 to win his first WWF Championship, there was a huge asterisk. HBK didn't even know if he was going to wrestle, because of course he was dealing with a career-threatening back injury. This was after the Royal Rumble, where The Undertaker had just thrown him onto a casket. If you are in the mood, I would go look this up on YouTube. It is a horrible landing, and the fact Shawn came back at all is more testament to him. It's why he was semi-retired from the ring for 4 years. So what would have happened if this back had flared up before WrestleMania 14? Who the hell would have been in the main event? I suppose he would have had to have lost the title, so do you do a tournament at WrestleMania and crown one that way? But then where do you go? The Undertaker, Triple H, Mankind? There's a lot of questions here. I mean, you even could have done Austin versus Mike Tyson. Definitely don't do that. The whole thing, though, is that a last-minute change due to an injured Heartbreak Kid could have thrown all of this off. I mean, Austin was going to be an industry-defining star anyway, but this would have been a massive hurdle. It also would have put a damper on everything we were doing, especially with Tyson as a special enforcer. That's why Michaels does deserve a lot of praise here. He basically gutted his way through this entire match. It sounded like he was in pain from bell to bell. Number 3, WrestleMania 4. What if DiBiase wins the tournament? So here's a fun fact for new wrestling fans. Once upon a time at WrestleMania, if you were a bad guy, you were never going to win the main event. I mean, that only changed at WrestleMania 2000 when Triple H walked away with the WWF title. Since then, it has become more commonplace, but if we jump back all the way to WrestleMania 4, there was actually a very real possibility that the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase could have left the event as a WWF champion. I mean, he and the Macho Man Randy Savage made it to the finals of the 14-man tournament for the vacant championship. Thankfully, Savage won, he deserved it. There are plenty of stories, though, that DiBiase at one point was slated to win all of this, and of course finally capture the belt he had attempted to purchase at Satellite's main event a couple of months earlier. So if that does happen, well, I can only presume that the $1 Million Man would have been a long-term heel champion. That was massive at the time too, because that hadn't happened since the days of superstar Billy Graham a decade earlier. Or maybe he would have just been a transitional champ and dropped it to the Macho Man at SummerSlam. Of course, Savage would have been chasing that belt and Hulk Hogan because he couldn't have helped himself. And what does that mean for the Mega Powers, who of course from this was going to go on to implode? It also probably would have nullified that eventual split because you needed the championship. And what does it do for Ted's career? The answer is I don't know. But in 2025, when people do ask the question, who is a guy that should have been WWF champion that never was, usually you hear Scott Hall, then right after that you hear Ted DiBiase. So really this was the right call because Savage's reign led to some major events during a hot period for the company. But again, my friends, we were this close. Number 2, WrestleMania 40, and what if WWE doesn't pivot? So of course, when The Rock came back in January 2024, the match had already been set. It was indeed going to be The Rock versus Roman Reigns, even though Cody Rhodes went and won the Royal Rumble. There's a whole documentary about this on YouTube. It was an absolute palaver. Now, eventually the social media noise got too much that WWE did indeed feel like, man, we have to go back to the original plan. This was great. Cody finished his story. We all cried water from our seeing devices. The thing is, though, they didn't have to do this. Given The Rock was involved, he could have been like, excuse me, everybody, I'm one of the biggest stars in the world. And that would have made sense. There's also a contingent of fans who were well up for The Rock versus Roman Reigns. We've been teasing that for years. Now, we will never know whether that match on that night would have been any good or not, although I'm sure it would be because those two know what they're doing. But in terms of Cody, well, he would have likely been done as a conquering hero. You can't win the Royal Rumble and then give up your spot and not have some backlash. It's quite literally impossible. It just would have stolen away his aura, and that sentiment would have only deepened. So maybe as I sit here talking to you today, he would have gone heel. That just sounds absolutely nuts. This, of course, is an actuality that could have happened if CM Punk hadn't got injured at the Royal Rumble, because my gosh, did that send everything into overdrive. So you should try booking that WrestleMania 40 because, number 1, WrestleMania 36, what if Roman doesn't leave WWE? So it is hard to fathom as we do return to the global pandemic, but good grief did this change everything. Don't forget Roman Reigns was meant to be at WrestleMania 36 when he was like, excuse me, my health isn't great, I'm going home, I'm not going to be back for a while. I mean, the whole reason Bill Goldberg beat Bray Wyatt for the Universal Championship is because Vince McMahon thought Roman versus Bill was a bigger marquee for WrestleMania. Sure, and I get that, but what did we end up getting instead? It was Goldberg versus Braun Strowman. Reigns would not return until SummerSlam a few months later when he did align with Paul Heyman and finally turned heel. We know the deal from there. It was absolutely perfect. We should have done this years prior. This is why Reigns deciding to do this is so important, because if he had worked Mania 36, I tell you everyone, I don't think he would have gone bad guy. So where the flub would we be today? We may not even have the bloodline. You'd also have to imagine that the Reigns-Heyman partnership doesn't start, and maybe he is still called himself the big dog. I shivered when I say that. That character was not good compared to what we have today. So it just means an ever-present Roman Reigns might never have become the mob boss that he did do. And then what the hell would WWE have done for like the next 5 years? I mean, that's basically how long the Bloodline story's been going on for. You also don't get the Jimmy Uso, Jey Uso main event at WrestleMania 38, and you do not get the big Jey Uso push that's happening right now. And maybe Jacob Fatu doesn't even get signed. Let's just throw this one out the window and decide that Roman did make the right choice, so bless that guy. In fact, let's never talk about it again. Now, of course, my friends, please do leave me a comment below and let me know what kind of what-ifs you want to see at WrestleMania, if you could go back in time or become Vince McMahon. If you like the video, share the video, and subscribe. You can also click the video on the screen to check out even more WWE-related content, but otherwise, my friends, I appreciate you and I love you, and I will talk to you again very soon.